Well, it's been a bit, guys. It's been a bit since I sat down and did a Promised Neverland chapter review. It's been almost a month, actually. The last chapter review I did was towards the end of March, and we're about to be at the end of April, so yeah, it's been a bit. So I just want to say I apologize for the delays in the Promised Neverland reviews. I have not dropped the series. In fact, I have been reading it weekly. Every time, a chapter comes out, I have been keeping up with it. I've kind of been slacking on the review department for the Promised Neverland because everything got thrown off the week when I did jury duty. Remember when I talked about that? A few weeks back, about 3 weeks ago, I said I had jury duty, and because of that, I couldn't do, videos on Monday, which in turn just resulted in me not being able to do Promised Neverland, and eventually I never got really around to doing it because the new anime season started, and there you go. But finally, I got the time to sit down and do this video, make a review for the Promised Neverland. Now, there is 4 chapters that has come out since the last time I did a review. Chapter 81, Chapter 82, Chapter 83, and Chapter 84 that came out yesterday. Now, I want to be completely honest here. I'm not going to probably go completely in-depth, like nitty-gritty, breaking down every single panel like I normally do in this video, because I do want to be able to catch up and give you guys a Promised Neverland video. I want to be able to say at the very least I am caught up. But for the most part, these 4 chapters are incredibly simple. They, for the most part, just focus on Lord Bayon and taking him down. It literally was just 4 chapters spent of that. Our characters trying to figure out how to take down the owner of this hunting ground, how they can best him, and how they can move over into the next main target, which is Lewis. So that's what the 4 chapters are really about, if I had to say a quick summary to it. But before I begin, though, I just want to say that I'm going to be trying my hardest to get back into doing weekly chapter reviews for this. Forgive me for all of you that thought I dropped this series or, was upset with me and all that. I am truly sorry. So anyways, with that being said, I guess let's start with the first chapter. Chapter 81 that I did not review. It focuses on Gillian and Nigel and them trying to figure out what the hell is going on. What was happening with Lord Bayon? What happened to Zack? What happened to Pepe? What happened to both of them? Because they were in charge of, holding Lord Bayon and then taking him out. And once they, finished off one of the other demons, the rich boy, they were supposed to go and back up Zack and Pepe. As we know, the time they finally were working their way over there, Lord Bayon was just walking through the forest like it was nothing, and so they were like, what's going on here? So much of Chapter 81 is Gillian and Nigel trying to figure out what's happening? Why is he here? And then they're trying to come to terms with what should be the plan now. What option do they have? Do they rush and attack him together? Do they both run away? Do they try to figure out if, Zack and Pepe are going to come out of nowhere and help them out? They were trying to get a grasp on the situation, which makes a lot of sense. They're analyzing everything to see what happened. If you look at, Lord Bayon in that moment, you see that his spear was very bloody. It was, covered in blood, which you could assume that most likely Zack and Pepe probably died because of Lord Bayon. Number 2, he didn't have his bodyguards. At the time of Chapter 81 when it came out, his 2 bodyguards that were always around him were gone. And so you could assume that there was a fight, and, Zack and, Pepe, they took his bodyguards out. And then in result of that, they probably died in the end. So that's kind of the assumption you get with Chapter 81, and eventually it leads into the conclusion to where Nigel wants to sacrifice himself to be able to save Gillian, allow Gillian to get out, go relay the information to everybody else down in the, the shelter where all the children are at, while he distracts and sacrifices his life. That's kind of what he wanted to do. But eventually, Gillian, because of her characterization and what she's been through in these recent chapters, she was like, no, I'm not just going to sit by and watch you die. I'm not going to see you charge in there and just drop dead just to save me. She's like, I'm tired of seeing people that are my friends or family dying around me. So it made a lot of sense why Gillian would do something like that, why she would charge in. She did not want Nigel to die in that moment. So they both decide to attack at the end of the day in Chapter 81, which moves over into Chapter 82. Chapter 82 is pretty much more of a psychological game, and also it swaps the perspective over to Lord Bayon, and now he is trying to gather information or trying to play mind games with the children to figure out what is really going on. Number one, Gillian, obviously, with her trying to charge in on Lord Bayon, it doesn't work out too well, because Lord Bayon's a completely different beast compared to the rich boy that they took down a couple of chapters previously. So obviously, it would be a lot harder to bring this man down in a 1v1 and even try to tackle him. And then number two, we also find out that, you know, the demons are very strong. Like, they're definitely stronger than the normal, you know, human. So that is good to know. That was confirmation on the fact that the demons definitely will have a lot more strength, and they will overpower a human. So it does make you wonder how, you know, civilization or humanity in the past 1,000 years ago were able to fight off the demons. I mean, we know that they were at the same technology. They were using spears and stuff and bows, but it still makes you wonder how they were able to put the demons in a standstill with them if they are supposedly superior in strength. Because 1,000 years ago, obviously, people didn't have guns. So that just, you know, makes you wonder how. What really happened to cause that? Anyways, getting back into the Gillian stuff and the Nigel stuff. So Gillian, she charges in, and obviously Lord Bayon's not having none of that. He grabs her, and he basically, you know, holds her as hostage after he slashes her down. And in that moment, when I was reading the chapter when it came out a couple weeks ago, I actually thought Gillian was going to die. I was like, yo, is she going to die? Like, is she dead? Because, I mean, it makes a lot of sense that some of our characters are going to have to die this arc. I mean, it's a hunting ground. These are the first demons that our characters are really going up against that are intelligent. It's a completely different ballgame compared to what Emma, Ray, and the Man with No Name was fighting in the woods. These are intelligent demons that are able to combat people, fight, you know, these children, and figure out their own strategy. So it's definitely going to be a lot harder. So I thought Gillian was going to die, and I was a little bit, like, scared for her because I really like her character. I really loved her character when she took down the previous demon, and I just did not want to see her just succumb to death or whatever. And Lord Bayon's like, look, I'll give you a choice right now. Either you take me to your leader and all that, you let me know who the main ringleader of this entire operation is, or she's going to die. She's going to die to her injuries. Make your choice, this girl or your leader. And obviously, this is some psychological warfare. You know, Lord Bayon is really nailing it in that he's trying to get this man emotionally, because if you see your friend just bleeding out and dying in front of you, you're not going to really know what to do. You're going to be like, do I run? Do I attack? What do I do? And in that moment, it was like, from what you could see, is that Nigel, he was coming to terms with probably having to kill Gillian. He was actually going to end her life where she wasn't going to suffer. So that scene got very dark very quickly in chapter 82, and I was like, yo, this man's actually going to kill her. Thankfully, Pepe came out of nowhere, used a smoke screen, and managed to save Gillian in that moment. It does not stop the fact that she has a critical injury, though. She's got a bad wound, so she's not, you know, out of, you know, danger yet. She could potentially still die, even in the latest chapters, because of the injury she received. So that is something very important to take note of. Anyways, once that is done and Pepe joins the group, it becomes very obvious that something obviously had to happen to Zack, because Zack was nowhere to be around. Like, we didn't see him at all with Pepe. We know for a fact that, you know, Lord Bayon, his spear, it had blood on it, so something obviously had to happen. Now, the blood was already on it before he attacked Gillian, so definitely something had to have happened. For instance, Lord Bayon had to have attacked, you know, Zack in some way and harmed him, either took a limb or something. We don't really know, but something had to have happened because, you know, Pepe being the only one there. And judging by the way the next chapter went, we get a little bit more of information. Or actually, chapter 84, my bad. Chapter 83 is more on, you know, Emma and, you know, Lewis and their convo, so I want to save that for later, actually. I'll talk about that last, since technically that doesn't go with the main theme of the other chapters I'm going to be talking about in this video. So, moving into chapter 84, the latest chapter, Lord Bayon, he knew that Pepe was following him. He knew that Pepe was behind the scenes doing something. He was going to throw another smoke bomb in a similar way to how his two servants were taken down. He knew Pepe was going to do some crusty stuff like that, and so he was very aware of that, and so he was using that as to his advantage, to be able to have the children like Gillian and Nigel and Pepe lead him to the shelter, lead him to where their main base is, which is very smart, because, I mean, that's what he wants to know. He wants to know who the main ringleader is. So Lord Bayon was multi-steps ahead. He was way ahead of what the children were thinking. He wasn't just making them make a choice, like, you know, either this girl Gillian, or, you know, you can run and all that, tell me where your leader is. He was going even further beyond that. With chapter 84, Lord Bayon makes a critical mistake. See, he underestimated the children. And he even admits he underestimated them, and if he was back in his prime like 1,000 years ago, he definitely wouldn't have made such a horrible mistake with this chapter. Because with him not being able to hunt properly for many years, having a real challenge, a true hunt, it's dulled his senses. It's dulled him from being really rational, because he's been fighting children that can't really win in the end of the day, so obviously he's not used to a situation where he's truly at a disadvantage. And the children, they knew that Lord Bayon would follow, and so they were hoping the fact that he would follow them to their hideout. So Lord Bayon was led into a trap. He thought he was chasing rabbits, but in reality he was chasing like bears or wolves, things that will turn back at you, animals that will bite you if you corner them, and that is exactly what happened in Chapter 84. Lord Bayon, when he entered the hideaway, obviously, that automatically put him in enemy territory, and he was not thinking of that until it was already too late. He didn't realize that he should have been cautious, because when he entered that environment, the structure of the tunnels and all of that were not to his liking. You can even see throughout the panels, like the fighting and all that, that when he was trying to use his spear that he's been using in recent chapters, he hit the roof of the hallway, which resulted in him not being able to move his attacks around properly, so it limited his area of attacks. He couldn't just, raise his spear and do this. He literally could only probably do jab motions and not even at full strength because of the way the hallway was designed. So, Lord Bayon, automatically, that limited him in terms of his combat capabilities. And then, on top of that, because of the closed confined space, him being able to dodge around, it's not really that easy, because if they have a bunch of people sitting there with their guns and all that, they can just light this man up. It's like a shooting hole. Just they're lining him up, he comes down to kill hole, he's done. He can't do anything. So that's where he made a mistake. And in the end result, Lord Bayon, he realized that error, which leads into some critical information we found out. So let's dive into that. So with Lord Bayon obviously suffering a defeat, about to drop down and die, we get a little bit of a flashback, some clarity to the origin of this hunting ground, and also how certain demons must feel about the loss of the hunting ground once everything is said and done. So we're going to find out that Lord Bayon, in fact, is, 1,000 years old. He is definitely very old. And so all the demons and all that, certain demons definitely have lived for a very long time. This is truly confirmation that they can live for a very long time, or very long lives, and Lord Bayon has been around since the very, very beginning. He was actually even a part of the main council members that, apparently put the promise in place, which is pretty interesting. And judging by the way the combo went from all the higher-ups and all of that with this promise, it makes me wonder why. Because judging by the way they were talking about this weird name, which has popped up every so often throughout the Promised Neverland, it's like you must follow the will of this. So I'm very curious what that means. Is it some form of god, transcended being or whatever between both species of human and demons? I'm very curious because there's no clarification to that one, but it's very obvious that the demons don't agree with it, but they have to agree with it nonetheless. If they don't, something very bad is going to happen. So I'm curious on that fact. Why? Why are they following it if they really don't want to do something like that? And then on top of that, too, we have it to where we get to find out how the farms are put in place in the first place. With, the promise being made, obviously farms needed to be made because, they didn't want to completely give up human meat. They didn't want to give up eating humans in the first place, so it resulted in them making farms. And from that point onward, Lord Bayon was tasked with, watching over as the manager of multiple farms, like a load of farms. He was in control of it. We can even see a convo 800 years ago with him and Lewis talking about it's very ironic or sad that Lord Bayon is the one having to watch over all the factories and all of that. He's the one watching over it, which leads to a lot of questions, like why? Like what was really going on there? I mean, we know that Lord Bayon wants a true hunt as well, but there has to be more clarification of why it's kind of sad that he has to be the one leading the, farms and stuff and, raising new cattle, children. It makes me wonder why Lewis would say that. So I do wonder if we're going to get more clarification in the future to what Lord Bayon's real reasoning to why it's bad for him to do this, or why it could potentially get to him and make him feel very upset. I'm curious about that. Anyways, though, Lord Bayon, with after, hundreds and hundreds of years passing by, around 500 years pass, he realizes that meat just doesn't taste good to him. He's like, it's tasteless. It's not the same. And it's understandable. I mean, even though it's cruel to think about him eating children, there's a lot of cases to where, like, if I'm going fishing and all that, getting a fresh fish is a lot better than a store-bought fish. That's just how it always is. It could be because of, it's being fresh, or just because you're the one that captured it. I don't know. But regardless of whatever it is, I can't understand the thought process of him, thinking the food is tasteless and it tastes better when he actually had to work for it, and which is what he was doing. He was hunting the children to be able to get the food he wanted. Now, he says in the chapter through the flashback that this mini hunting ground he made, he knows it isn't perfect, and he knows that, it's not like what it used to be. But because of how the world works, because of how the promise is, he has to go by these rules. He has to have the hunting ground like this. And with this eventually happening, his craving for human flesh in the hunt grew more and more. He got more and more addicted to hunting after human cattle, which resulted, in him having multiple children in his hunting ground. So, this explains how he went from one child, like, every couple of months, to multiple children every month. That is pretty crazy to see just how far he came along after the many, many years of doing this. Then, we also know now that a lot of the demons apparently do know about this. Like, a lot of people do know about this secret hunting ground of, Lord Bayon, what he does. And so, because of that, we do know that with him being gone, when he does in fact die, because it does look like he's dead at the end of this chapter, that this is going to definitely upset a lot of the higher tier demons, because his hunting ground has been somewhat of a saving grace for demon kind. And with him being gone, it's going to make a bunch of people very upset. They're going to be extremely upset to the point to where they probably are going to just want, to have a real hunt, but they're not going to be able to do it. It's going to make them antsy. Like, if you get, like, a taste of something, like a craving of something, you're going to want more of it. And if that happens, others might be led to probably creating their own hunting ground in some way. So I could definitely see that being the result of Lord Bayon falling if he truly is dead, and a lot of demons really did rely on him. So anyways, with that though, Oliver takes a critical blow. With the final blow going in and all that, with, Lord Bayon trying to attack, Lucas, Oliver jumps in the way, manages to stop the man, but in turn, Lord Bayon claws him right in the gut. Now, because of that, we don't really know if Oliver is dead, but at the same time, it is pretty bad when you look at the wound. So we have to see where that's going to go. I mean, if Lord Bayon is still alive in any way, then his claws obviously could go even further and just yank out a bunch of, like, flesh off his body. But yeah, it's a pretty bad wound. So Gillian, she's on the floor. She's hurt. Oliver just got a critical injury, and then Zach as well, he's pretty much bleeding out in the forest, dead, so we got 3 characters that are pretty much dead at this point. That's kind of messed up. All just to take down Lord Bayon. So it shows that this man was not easy to bring down at all, and that makes you put in perspective how crazy it's going to be to take down, Lewis of all people, if it was just this hard to take down Lord Bayon. Now, speaking of Lewis, let's get into chapter 83 when it comes to Emma and Lewis's conversation. So it's a pretty simple conversation. I actually talked about this in my Chapter 80 review, what could potentially happen, that, Lewis, he's an individual that wants a true hunt. And in Chapter 84, obviously, Lord Bayon finally got the taste of a true hunt in a very long time, and he loved it. He was having fun, which was very interesting to see from his character. But we get to see how Lewis, since we know he likes real hunts. He wants a fair hunt. He wants it to where both sides have their life on the line. He doesn't want something completely unbalanced. We know how his character is. And so him, probably removing his mask, giving information to the children about, where his weakness could potentially be, it falls in line with his character. I talked about this actually in Chapter 80. My Chapter 80 review, and that is definitely true with Chapter 83. He went as far as to tell the weakness of the demons. He also was willing to remove his mask to make sure that it was equal, so if they shot him in the face, he was done. So Lewis is an individual that really does want a fair fight. He isn't just talk, he does want a true and real fight. And when Emma's trying to distract him, obviously, because that's the entire plan, she needs to distract him for 15 minutes, obviously Lewis, he realizes this. like that. He knows Emma is trying to distract him, and he becomes very aware of this very quickly in their conversation. And he states, like, look, I know what you're doing. I know you're trying to stall for time. I know that you're trying to make it to where everybody else is taken out. I understand what you're doing right now. You don't even need to, make a charade and hide about this or lie. I know what you're doing. And he's like, you know what? I'll give you 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes. I'll give you time. I will give you time. You want to know why? Because I want to see what's going to happen. I want to see, because it's even more interesting for me if I let you do what you're doing. Because this overall game of what's going on right now between Lewis and Lucas has been building up for many, many years. So obviously he wants to see this through. He wants to see what is really going to happen. What has been building up behind the scenes underneath the playground for many, many years. That is what really is driving Lewis at this point. So obviously he's willing to wait. It falls in line with his character. It's not against what he's been showcasing thus far. So I enjoy that and appreciate that a lot. However, he does say something to Emma. If nothing is done, and nothing interesting does happen, he's going to take out his aggression on Emma. So, Emma is in danger. If things are not done in a proper fashion and people don't get there, he's going to probably kill Emma. So, that is definitely something that's kind of scary, because they are kind of short on time. They still have all the other demons and all that. What happened, with Bayon and stuff, so, I mean, it makes me wonder if they're going to be able to make it in time to help out Emma. But that's pretty much it. That's the 4 chapters. I know that this video is a little bit short. I know there's a lot of little details I could go even more in-depth with, but that's the main context of what the 4 chapters were about, and I just want to be able to say that I finally caught up with my chapter reviews, and I can, now start doing weekly chapter reviews and diving into them. Please forgive me for the delay. I am very sorry. I'll try not to let it happen again. Just a lot of things have been happening recently in my life with the whole thing with the new anime season, to the stuff with my dad, and the jury duty stuff. It was multiple setbacks, so I am sorry about that, but here you go. Here is Promised Neverland once again back on the channel. So if you enjoy my content, please subscribe, and if you really do appreciate these Promised Neverland videos, please leave a like. It does help me out a lot. It does let me know that you love this content. So with that, Chibi out.